We've talked a lot on here about measuring success for your communications, adding calls to action and messages, conducting surveys, doing walkthrough audits, things like this. But there is another tool that you might not be using, or maybe you're using it but not correctly, and that is analytics. So to analyze analytics with me today, I am joined by Trey Hicks, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Sales Officer for Visix. Hi, Trey.
Hey, Derek. How are you?
Excellent. That's a lot of work. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Keeps me busy.
Yes, indeed. All right. I'd like to thank Trey for joining me today, and of course, everybody out there for listening. Don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast, and you can also follow along with a full transcript on the Visix website. Just go to visix.com/resources/podcasts. Whether you're using digital signage or not, our podcast gives you practical tips for communications and content to better engage your audience. I'm Derek DeWitt. Welcome to Digital Signage Done Right. Okay, so let's qualify by what we mean when we say analytics in general. What is that?
Yeah, so Derek, Wikipedia says analytics is the discovery, interpretation, and communication of meaningful patterns in data. And the key thing there is meaningful.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the important thing.
Yep. And if you're managing communications for your organization, you want to look for meaningful data and also meaningful patterns that you can act on.
Sure. That makes sense. I assume a lot of communications and like marketing professionals especially, they're already familiar with analytics to a certain extent. I know a lot of people who have to deal with websites use Google Analytics. That's kind of the standard for anybody using a website because you want to, sort of figure out how to get highly ranked on Google.
Yeah, that's right. And I just think that a lot of people, while they hear about Google Analytics and analytics used in analyzing business performance and, different things like that, I'm thinking of KPIs. People just don't think about using analytics to judge the performance of their visual communication platform. And, and it really can seem pretty technical and overwhelming at first.
Right, exactly. You start thinking spreadsheets and graphs and I don't know, I'm not an accountant, I mean, basically you're asking creative people to crunch a bunch of numbers, which they would say, hey, that's not what I do, man.
Yep, but it's worth it. And at the end of the day, most good platforms, you're not having to dig through thousands of lines of numbers, in a giant spreadsheet. You're looking at reporting, which is pretty cool. The reports will put you on the right path. And it can help you answer questions like, are we communicating often enough? Are we connecting with the right audiences? Are we messaging at the right time with the right medium? Are we reinforcing our mission and other important goals? Are we working efficiently? And last, but certainly not least, are our messages received and understood?
Yeah, that last one. I mean, that's really the thing, because you just kind of throw it out there and go, well, I hope, I don't even know how many times we've said you care about what you measure, but it's true. So you need to measure somehow. Otherwise, you just really don't know if what you're doing is working and if it's time and money well spent.
Yeah, the supporting evidence of how well your communication efforts are going is there for the taking. You just have to be willing to spend time with the analytics to get familiar with what can be revealed from that information. And, for most of our clients, once they get into it, they're surprised how straightforward a lot of the data is.
If you're measuring like ROI for sales or employee satisfaction or for your website or something else, why wouldn't you use analytics to measure ROI for the entire system and communications initiative, right?
Right. Great communication in large organizations is critical to keep people informed and on the same mission, on the same path. And ROI is return on investment. There's its cousin, which I think is the more important variation as we talk about digital signage and digital signage analytics, and that's ROO. Return on objectives. Yeah. And it's digital signage analytics. I mean, that's the critical piece to measuring ROO, return on objectives, along with your calls to action. Derek, really, it's when we put those two together that we can tell a lot.
Sure. And, it's interesting. We talk about putting calls to action in messages, but in many ways, the analytics itself is a call to action for the communications team or the marketing team or the organization. There's an article on Forbes that says, at its very core, this is a quote, at its very core, data tells us what we need to do next.
Yes, for sure. Analytics can quickly provide insights that make your next step more obvious. For example, let's say you have two departments using your digital signage platform, and one is getting great return on objective, but the other says they're not. When the data says they're not posting messages frequently at all and their content is stale, then immediately we know what they need to do next.
It's interesting. There's a guy, Peter Drucker, who once said, what gets measured gets managed. So let's talk about those specifics about some of those digital signage analytics. How do we better measure and manage these visual communications?
Yeah, we've talked a lot how you can collect data using calls to action, as you mentioned, Derek. So we won't go into that much here.
Yeah, really. Just do a search. Just use the search bar on the Visix website. You'll see plenty of stuff.
Absolutely, really good stuff. But know that pairing these analytics with calls to action can help you better measure engagement for both your staff and your audiences. We also have a long blog with more general analytics advice, and we'll provide a link to that.
Yeah, that'll be in the transcript.
Great. I'll concentrate on analytics that are available in our CMS, our content management software. And also you'll see that other CMS vendors have similar analytics that people can use too.
So what are some of the more frequently asked questions that Visix clients have that these digital signage analytics can answer?
Yeah, when people think about analytics for digital signage, I think one of the first things they think about is, wanting to track how many times or how much content has been shown on their screens and kind of when and where. So they really kind of want to know how many times a message played over a certain period of time, what playlists might need more content, and then where's our digital signage being used the most based on playlist submissions. They also want to know who's contributing. In most departments, you have multiple content contributors. And in fact, maybe it's a system where different departments or business units are managing their own message playlists. And then you may also have headquarters or the campus at large putting messages across campus or across the company as well. And in that case, users want to know, or administrators want to know, who are my power users based on content submissions and who might need more training based on lack of submissions.
That's interesting. I mean, your power users can probably help the people who aren't doing so much. A little peer-to-peer training and knowledge sharing is always a good idea. We often talk about as well the importance of sort of having a champion or a cheerleader, somebody who looks at the digital signage and the whole communication strategy as not just a task or series of tasks to be got through, but as something that's really great, and they're 100% behind it. So that's another way that those kinds of people can help the organization as a whole.
That's right. Those people can provide training or content ideas and mentor other contributors, which is really important. Organizations might also have approval processes in place. And in fact, a lot of universities have student workers who are submitting content. We have corporate and healthcare customers who have interns who are uploading content every day. But before that content is displayed on screen, someone has to approve it before it goes out to our digital signage. And in that case, digital signage analytics can really tell you, are we responding quick enough to content that's been submitted for approval? And is most of the content getting approved instead of disapproved? Right.
That's an interesting point. God, have we not trained people into how to format this stuff or what kind of stuff they should put up,
Yeah, exactly.
It occurs to me, the dream someday in the future is, right out of the film Minority Report, where we can actually track how many eyeballs have actually looked at a screen and seen a particular message. That's the ultimate dream, I think. That'll give you exactly the analytics you want, but we're just not there yet. So what exactly does Visix's Access TV Signage Suite software have available for analytics now, today?
Yeah, so there's at least 5 different areas that we can provide reporting on. And in fact, before we talk through those, I want to mention 2 things. One is that the Signage Suite analytics work no matter if the deployment is in the cloud or on premise. And really, I'm referring to your CMS, your content management system, whether that's hosted in the cloud by Visix or it's on premise. Your IT group is taking care of that. You have analytics either way. And the really cool thing is analytics are just built into the platform. Your CMS, your playback engine, it's there. There's no additional costs or licensing required for that. So let's talk about the 5 different reports and tracking that you can do. So first, I want to focus on 3 reports that can help you track your content and your messaging. And the first one, really tracking message playback, that's the one that most people think about. Most of our clients are focused on visual communication. They're leveraging their digital signage platform to communicate better with their larger audience. And with message playback, you can track any of the content you're uploading and that you're scheduling to be played back across your enterprise. You can track any of that just with a click per message, okay? And what we're going to get there is we run a report. We're going to see where that message played, how many times it was played back on screen, who submitted it, what playlist it was a part of. You even get information on the cumulative time that content was on screen.
Ah, right. So like, hey, this, whatever, it's up for 7 seconds and it was, I don't know, it was shown 100 times today. That's 700 seconds.
Yeah.
And I assume it also shows you like what time of the day and things like this in case people have day parted.
Yeah, exactly. If HR needs to communicate something really important to their thousands of employees, and it's a really important message, and they'd like to document what they did on digital signage as part of their overall communication plan, after they run their campaign, they can go back to analytics, run a report just for that one piece of content and be able to show and to make record of that they showed that important HR related information 1,000 times over the course of 3 weeks, Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 5 p.m. every day.
Right. Then it allows you to change things on the fly, which is quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can really take that report, and what's really cool about the reporting in Signage Suite is it's a live report. So without having to export to Excel, which you can do, and without having to, to go into a spreadsheet, manipulate columns and sorting and all that stuff, right when you're looking at the report in Signage Suite, you're able to sort, filter, organize the reporting so that it's meaningful to you right there through the web interface. The next report that you can run is related to message approval. We mentioned before that we have lots of organizations who are using student workers or interns to post content across their platform. And using the analytics here, we can see how quickly we are approving content or how slow we're being, to approve content so that it can actually make it out to screens. And if we're seeing that a lot of content is getting disapproved instead of approved, then we can focus back on our content policies and our communication of those policies to get everybody, our content contributors back on the right track for the type of content they should be submitting for our digital signage platform. And the next report is related to playlist activity. This was a great one. And this is one of those that as soon as you start looking at the data, it's kind of pretty obvious what's happening here. You immediately start to see which playlists are most popular, what media players they're playing back on, and you also see the inverse, which playlists are not getting many content submittals at all and aren't really being used at all. So you've got a really good evidence of activity on your digital signage platform just by looking at playlist activity. And on top of that, there are at least 2 other reports that you can jump into. One is related around content submission. And here we can take a look at how many content items have been submitted by user. And you can also sort this information, what we call a sub-organization. And sub-organizations can be for different clients, different business units, different departments. So now we're looking at, activity and how many content items have been submitted by user and by sub-organization, which again, along with your playlist activity information, really tells you utilization across your platform on 2 different levels.
Sure, that makes sense. You can look at that report and go, wow, HR is really, boy, they really ramped it up recently. And yet the development team, they never post anything.
Yeah, and that likely means their content is stale. So we want to encourage them. In fact, let's ask some of our very experienced content contributors who are using the platform on a weekly basis to help them out and to give them guidance on how they can easily add more content. I mean, the fact is, you can drag and drop all kinds of content into the platform, PowerPoint, graphics, video clips, Office documents. So it's really easy to get information in there, and you can have your technology champions and your power users push them along.
And then what's the fifth report?
Yeah, so this one is around user activity. So what you can quickly see here, and this is one that administrators often look for, and that is they're looking at their active users in the platform. Here, one of the very basic things you can do is identify what user accounts aren't being used at all. Meanwhile, you've got more supporting information on user activity because you're seeing who has popped into the system just in the last couple of days or in the last week compared to people who haven't logged into the system for, let's say, a month or two.
Right. So you can say like, wow, I think HR is really cranking out the stuff, but really it's just Mary. Mary's the one. She's on fire.
Yeah, Mary's our power user. And all of these different reports related to analytics, they're really giving us a snapshot of the utilization of our platform for a certain period of time. And the cool thing is, for any of these reports you can run, you can pick a period of time. Maybe when we want to look back at last quarter, go through these 5 reports and just see what the data reveals.
Sure. Now, all this sounds, pretty comprehensive. Are these digital signage analytics that Visix offers, are they hard to set up? Are they complicated to use? Or
no, they're actually really easy to enable. Just a checkbox or two, and you're enabling analytics for your platform.
Because, like you said, it's already part of the software. It's nothing extra. It's already there. It's a feature.
Yeah, that's right. It's already there. So all you're doing is telling the platform that, yes, you want to track your platform utilization. You can set parameters like the number of days that you're retaining data. And then for any content that you want to track specifically, it's just an additional checkbox to say, hey, I want to check how many times this video from IT plays back across our enterprise for the next week. Very easy to get going.
Now, are these reports customizable as well? I assume there's some level of customization.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can set the date range for any of the analytics that you look at. You choose which columns to show, and you can rearrange them within the reports. And that relates to the live reporting that I mentioned before.
Right. So if you say, hey, you know what, the default is this column is the 5th one over, but for me, I want it 3rd over.
That's right. Yeah. And you can even drag one of the column headers and make that how your data is grouped throughout the report. So you've got tools for sorting, filtering, grouping, and funneling the data to make it more useful to your organization.
Right. And does any of that use conditional logic or no?
Yeah. You can use conditional logic in your filtering, and any of the reports can be exported to an Excel spreadsheet so that you can more easily share that with other departments, with the C-suite.
So you've got it there kind of live on the fly. You can turn it into a spreadsheet to share. You can turn that spreadsheet into visualizations. I think there's something in the software also that will, like a widget that pulls data from Excel reports. So you could share those visualizations that say you created for the C-suite with a department or with the organization if you wanted to.
Yeah, you sure could. I would recommend that, you create a couple bar charts or, make some graphs that tell the story, but then you could easily share that information across the digital signage platform so that other people see which departments are using the platform more and, what takeaways were revealed from your look at the analytics.
Right. Okay, so I have all this information. It's pretty easy to set up. It's pretty easy to get. It's pretty easy to manipulate. What am I supposed to do with it? I could see some people saying, okay, it's not that hard, but it's still time. Why should I care? What do I do with it?
So what we want to do there is look for patterns, look for holes, and ask questions. Are there any playlists that need more attention? Is there a campaign that wasn't successful? Did it get the correct amount of screen time, which we can easily see from the analytics?
Right. Maybe that was a contributing factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that you can quickly see is if you have too much content at one point in time. For instance, it's really ideal that a playlist has only about 8 to 10 pieces of content in rotation at any point in time, 8, 10, 12. But if you take a look and there's 50 items in that playlist and you're wondering why that one message, didn't have an impact, it wasn't absorbed by your larger audience. Well, that's why you're running way too much content in the playlist at that time. Your one piece of content that was most important, it didn't stand a chance.
Right, because it's only showing up every 350 seconds.
Yeah. Are there users who aren't participating? Analytics can reveal that for us so that we can get them the help they need.
I think it's nice too. Like you said, you can find out which users aren't participating, and it's not a to shame them kind of a thing. It's like maybe they just don't want to, or maybe they don't know how to, and how can we help them out, which I think is quite nice.
Yeah, we can quickly point them to our learning management system, the LMS. Maybe there are tutorials or videos there that they want to take a look at as a refresher on how to be able to quickly create content and schedule it for display within their department.
Now, I would imagine, let's say I just got the system or I just activated analytics. I listened to this podcast and went, oh, I should do that. I would imagine that in the first month or weeks, I wouldn't have a lot of data. So you probably need a chunk of time to really get anything useful and actionable.
Yes, you'll need at least a couple of weeks of data for it to be relevant. Chances are you'll start to see patterns in which users are contributing the most, what playlists are being updated the most, and other trends within just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think one of the things people need to keep in mind is this is not a task. It's a business operation. It's a process, not just, oh, I got it done, tick. Like this is an ongoing thing that constantly changes and evolves over time. You also mentioned that you can share the data with teams. How complicated is it for them to understand it?
Yeah, that depends on who you're sharing it with. Anytime you're presenting analytics and raw data, it's good to boil it down so that people get the point quickly. Instead of sending a spreadsheet, full of columns and rows, use data visualizations like pie charts and trend lines to better communicate your points. Summarize the top points in a few sentences, and you'll need to provide context. Data without context can be very hard to understand.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's like, what does that mean? It's funny because that advice on how to share it, like take the time to, summarize it very quickly, a couple of bullet points and some visualizations, is very much like creating a digital signage message.
Sure. Yeah, and I think what most organizations are going to find is that when they look at that historical snapshot, they're going to see good patterns, and then they're going to see some things that their organization can work on. Like you and I talked about, there may just be a few playlists that people aren't contributing enough content to, or some playlists that have too much content, So I think there's going to be more action that comes out of the analytics than necessarily information that you feel like you have to report to other groups.
So, people listening, if you want to make informed decisions about your communications, you really do need to be using analytics. It's not that difficult. Visix, for example, the Signage Suite software already includes it. I think probably a lot of other platforms out there as well do. And if you want to know about the efficiency and the impact of your visual messaging, both to your audience and sort of behind the scenes, obviously digital signage analytics is the way to go. That's what's going to help you in that area. I've been speaking with Trey Hicks, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Sales Officer for Visix. Thank you, Trey, for talking to me today. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening to this episode of Digital Signage Done Right.
Thanks, Derek. I enjoyed it.
For more free stuff, head to resources on Visix.com for guides, videos, and more to help with your visual communications. Please subscribe and share, and contact us for information about our digital signage solutions.